In the spring of 2016, a cruel and callous murder occurred in the sleepy Texas town of Fort Worth, shocking even the most seasoned detectives. Elizabeth Paula Ariano, a young mother of many children and paramedic, was the victim of the crime. You'll be horrified to hear who put her to death. Because of the peculiar circumstances surrounding the tragedy, the authorities first even proposed the possibility that Elizabeth might have died of her own volition. Nevertheless, the evidence of others who happened to be unintentional witnesses to the horrific event contradicted this idea. The investigation had to work very hard to make sense of everything and bring the offender to justice. However, many felt that the punishment was too light and unjust considering the severity of the act he committed. August 16, 1987, saw the birth of Elizabeth Paula Ariano in the American city of Fort Worth, Texas, where she would spend the remainder of her brief life. She was practically inseparable from her two sisters, Alexandra and Giovana, during her upbringing. When Elizabeth was very little, her birth father abandoned the family. He showed no interest in the destiny of his girl and didn't get in touch with her in any capacity. Juanita, her mother, remarried to a man named Fidel shortly after, and he adopted her children and treated them as if they were his own. Elizabeth had an exceptionally warm relationship with her stepfather, who upheld and helped her in all things. The young woman worked hard in school and aspired to become a doctor. In secondary school, she met a person named Rudolph Ariano, with whom she before long had a close connection. Elizabeth's parents were a little miffed that the chosen daughter was almost 8 years older than him, but they didn't stop them from getting together because they thought the young man was serious and trustworthy. At 16 years old, scarcely out of school, Elizabeth wedded her sweetheart legitimately. The couple had 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter, one after the other. Yet, in spite of the presence of various beneficiaries, Elizabeth didn't expect to turn into a housewife. Elizabeth remembered her childhood goal, so she went to medical school, got a job as a paramedic, and planned to get a doctor's degree. The young lady was thoughtful and devout, raised in Christian customs. She routinely took her kids to chapel, imparting in them love and empathy for their neighbours. Loved ones portrayed her as an extremely responsive individual, consistently prepared to help. Their union with Rudolph appeared solid and content from the outside, but after 13 years of living together, it began to literally break apart. Rudolph had previously been envious of his young wife and attempted to exert control over her in all aspects, but over time, his behaviour became completely intolerable. In the spring of 2016, Elizabeth, after one more envy scene coordinated by her significant other, took the kids and moved to the place of her folks. Rudolph made an endeavour to accommodate with his better half, yet the young lady was burnt out on enduring his mad outbursts. Additionally, she gathered her courage and officially filed for divorce because she did not want the children to hear about their parents' scandals almost every day. A couple of days after Elizabeth took the youngsters and petitioned for legal separation, she bafflingly vanished. She was in good spirits according to friends and family, and she decided to go to a local club with colleagues after work to distract herself from family issues and a minor divorce. Consequently, on Friday evening, April 15, 2016, the young mother, who was 28 years old, went to a fun location with her friends. She danced and had a good time at the club, but she didn't drink because she planned to drive home in her own vehicle, which is how she got to the club. On April 16th, Elizabeth got home well after midnight. Having left the vehicle, she called her companion, with whom she had travelled at the club that evening, and told her that she had proactively arrived at home and that she was okay. After that, Elizabeth ended the call but never entered the house. When Juanita discovered that her daughter was not at home the following morning, she was extremely concerned. She realised that Elizabeth was wanting to go through the night with companions, however her girl ought to have returned quite a while in the past. Her car was parked outside the house, indicating that Elizabeth had returned from the club, so she couldn't leave unannounced. At the point when Juanita moved toward the vehicle, it worked out that it was not locked. The key was all the while staying in the start, and inside on the seat were her girl's handbag and mobile phone. She could not, of course, leave her belongings in the open car like that, which indicated that something awful had occurred. The lady quickly called the police, detailing a missing individual. The police accepted that they would have the option to tackle the case, as they call it, on hot tracks. Likewise, there was still expectation that Elizabeth was alive, in light of the fact that there was no blood or indications of battle in the vehicle. However, it wasn't that easy. The first step was to find and question every possible witness, retrace Elizabeth's entire route, and reconstruct the evening and night's events in the tiniest detail. In the first place, companions and partners of the young lady with whom she had gone through the night prior to her vanishing were evaluated. They gave precisely when she returned home, and later Elizabeth herself got back to, saying that she had arrived at the spot securely. What's more, a few calls and messages from her ex, Rudolph Ariano, who had constantly attempted to reach her that evening, were found in the missing individual's mobile phone. Yet Elizabeth never responded to him. Cops went to Rudolph's home to find out where he was and what he was doing the past night and night. As per the man, he had been in touch with his ex-companion simply the prior night, and she had guaranteed that she would carry the youngsters to him for the end of the week. However, a while later, she quit picking up the telephone, and he thought she had adjusted her perspective. With respect to a vindication, Arellano's justification was problematic. As per him, he sat with a companion at a nearby bar that night, and around 12 p.m. he got back to his home and hit the hay. Rudolph was indeed present at the establishment on Friday, as confirmed by his friend and a number of others who had been unwinding there. However, no one could be sure where he went afterward. The man guaranteed that he had returned home, yet as he presently resided alone, there was nobody to affirm this. In this way, the police wouldn't bar Mr. Arellano from the rundown of suspects. Furthermore, he did not appear concerned or upset. Obviously, he and Elizabeth were currently separate, yet they had been hitched for a long time. She was the mother of his youngsters, and it was peculiar that her vanishing had not impacted him at all. A fisherman called the emergency services to report an odd occurrence he had witnessed on the night that a young mother vanished. The man said that he was sitting alone with a casting pole on an extension, which is important for an interstate throughway, when about beyond 4 a.m. he saw a vehicle drive onto the scaffold. The driver then made a stop, grabbed a large object that looked like a person, and threw it into the water. It likewise appeared to him that something cumbersome and clearly weighty was attached to this individual. He was too far away to see the fisherman, and it was still dark, so he couldn't see any details or the car's make or number. Moreover, there was areas of strength for and on the extension, so the man couldn't hear anything. Soon after, another witness saw his dog a nighttime walk by the bridge. He didn't have the foggiest idea what was occurring on the actual extension, yet an unfortunate shout grabbed his eye. Then he saw something enormous flying down from the extension, trailed by a sprinkle and afterward quiet. In view of the declaration of witnesses, the police chose to look at the lower part of the lake close to the extension. After a few hours, divers discovered a body with a massive piece of concrete roped around its neck. The overwhelmed lady went to be the missing Elizabeth Arellano. Had it not been for the declaration of a bystander and an angler, her body would likely have been found very soon or not found by any stretch of the imagination, in light of the fact that the attached weight didn't permit the body to drift. Then, at that point, a form was advanced that the young lady chose to leave her life deliberately against the foundation of issues in the family. Yet, this supposition that was illogical in light of the fact that it didn't fit with the declaration of an observer who perceived how somebody tossed her into the water, nor with the expressions of family members who guaranteed that Elizabeth made extraordinary arrangements forever and could never do this to her kids and guardians. When a piece of concrete was tied around Elizabeth's neck and thrown off the bridge, she was still alive. This was confirmed by the legal clinical outcomes, which showed that the young lady had suffocated, and by the declaration of her frantic man's shout as she flew down the scaffold. In any case, who and why might have so severely slaughtered a mother of numerous kids? Theft was not considered on the grounds that Elizabeth's possessions were not generally taken. There were theories that the killer might have seen Elizabeth in the club and followed her home, or that someone might have guarded her at home and been waiting for her to come home. The ex of the departed kept on demanding that he was resting at his home the evening of homicide and didn't have anything to do with the wrongdoing, despite the fact that Rudolph lacked an excuse and his actions continued to raise more and more questions. The authorities were still hesitant to remove him from the list of possible suspects. The man put on an act at the funeral. He sobbed at the casket of his ex, saying that he might want to be in her place or bite the dust with her. As per his sister Elizabeth, she even put stock in the truthfulness of his words. Likewise, Rudolph effectively helped in the making of a magnanimous establishment to raise assets for the service of goodbye to his significant other. However, when the man was called back to testify after the funeral, he already appeared and behaved completely different, as if nothing bad had happened to him. After a nitty-gritty assessment of all the CCTV film from the last course Elizabeth took, It was resolved that a vehicle of a similar make and variety as Rudolph's had driven away from her folks' home around 3 a.m. The neighbour likewise saw the vehicle left out and about close to the departed's home. Their neighbour also remembered seeing the car parked on the road near the house of the deceased. In addition, it was established that the vehicle had continued to travel in the direction of the very bridge from which the woman had been thrown. When the investigation requested Rudolph's cell phone data on the night of the crime, additional questions were prompted by this circumstance. It worked out that the man settled on a few decisions that evening, first close to Elizabeth's work environment, and afterward close to the home of his mother by marriage and father by marriage. He additionally sent his ex a few messages attempting to find out when she would return. However, his messages went unanswered. Clearly, he had been following her, and at last chose to sit tight for her return at Elizabeth's folks' home. Finally, the police had enough evidence to detain Rudolph as the main suspect and bring him to the station to be questioned further. One of the vital observers for the situation was Elizabeth and Rudolph's oldest child, at the point when the kid was shown the rope eliminated from his mom's neck. The child expressed that he had seen it before in the patio of his dad's home and recalled that it well since he had played with it. In addition, the boy was familiar with a piece of concrete that had been left in their garden shortly before the fence had been replaced. Likewise, little parts of this substantial were found in the storage compartment of the vehicle, having a place with Rudolph. The man waited for his ex-wife at her parents' house before kidnapping her, according to the investigation. He constrained her into his vehicle, in the storage compartment of which he had previously prearranged rope and cement. He drove to the bridge where the massacre was taking place afterward, hoping no one would notice. Rudolph was arrested 10 days after his ex's body was recuperated from the lake. Regardless of a lot of proof and witness declaration demonstrating his responsibility, Rudolph denied any contribution in the wrongdoing and kept on demanding that he was at home that evening. Given the ruthlessness of his activities, Rudolph was confronting a definitive punishment of death. Then, following counsel from his attorney, he made the decision to admit everything and cooperate with the investigation in order to reduce the sentence. Ariano didn't admit guilt in court until January 2019, when he explained how he kidnapped and killed his ex-wife and the mother of their 4 children. Juanita, who was in the court paying attention to his story, blacked out, and Alexandra and Giovana called their sister's executioner a beast. Rudolph himself, however, he conceded his responsibility, felt no regret or aches of still, small voice. He did not offer an apology or a reason for his terrible deed, and he spoke of his murder indifferently and coldly. The court condemned the killer to life in jail without any chance to appeal. Elizabeth's relatives, in spite of the fact that they considered such a sentence rather gentle, yet noticed that they pardon Rudolph in light of the fact that they don't believe their hearts should overflow with contempt. Her folks and sisters are currently answerable for the childhood of the departed lady's kids.